Welcome, one and all, console war veterans and civilian noobs, to the second episode of the Green vs. Blue podcast. We are your hosts, David and
PlayStation Pat Fennel.
Green vs. Blue is a podcast where we, your hosts, discuss the two best gaming platforms, Xbox and PlayStation. This episode's segments include Games This Week, Cross-Examination, and our new rotating segment, Pat's Self-Righteous Rants. Before we get started, I'd like to, personally plug our Patreon. So check out our patreon.com/green versus blue. That's green vs blue. And PSBoxCast@gmail.com is our email if you'd like to give us a shout, any thoughts or suggestions for future episodes. You can find me at SDDawg on YouTube. That's SDDAWG at YouTube. You can find Pat at...
You can find me on YouTube at Variety Pat. That is VARIOTY Pat. Variety Pat. Or on Instagram at Prime Patrick.
Let's get into our first segment of the episode, which is called Retroscope. Pat, please explain what that segment is.
So Dave, Retroscope is going to be our new segment every week, where we will go back and discuss any news stories that are still developing, and or we will make any corrections or amendments to any incorrect information that we gave last week.
Cool. Do we have anything to present for that segment this week?
There's still the story between Apple and Epic is still developing, so we'll get back to that at a later date for sure. We didn't have anyone write in this week, so there was nothing glaringly wrong about our show last week.
Cool. All right, let's get into our first segment.
So, games this week. This week, David, I have not played anything. I was busy getting this show together. We're still rolling out on the various podcasting hosting platforms. Yeah, I did, however, download Super Smash Bros. Brawl on my... Is it called? No, it's not called Brawl. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate on my Nintendo Switch, and I guess you could say the one sort of gamified thing that I had been doing this last week was I began collecting Funko Pops.
Nice. What kind of Funko Pops?
Oh, there's a new line of PlayStation Funko Pops that just came out. Those are really difficult to find. They're not really on store shelves yet, but there are a lot of sales going on at GameStop and stuff, so for anybody looking for figurines, Funko's covers way too many bases, way too many different IPs, so really, whatever you're interested in, whether it be, there's a WWE wrestling line, and there's a line with some artists and film directors, all the way to our PlayStation characters that we love.
Yeah, I collect Halo Pop Funkos. That's the only one. Those are the only ones that I've collected so far. Speaking of Halo, that's pretty much the only thing I've been playing this week. Halo 5, as I mentioned in our first episode, I'm going for max rank. We did cover that at length last episode, so check that episode out.
Have you hit level 51 yet out of 52?
152. I am at 148, almost at 149.
Okay.
Almost halfway to the max rank.
Cool. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
All right, so new releases this week. Fall Guys is not a new game, but it has in fact passed 16 million players on PlayStation 4. And I bring it up especially because for the next 2 weeks, it is still free for PlayStation Plus members. So be sure to snatch that up before you have to pay for it when your friends are bothering you about playing it later.
Cool. And we do have more on that later in this episode on Fall Guys?
I believe we will be revisiting Fall Guys later in the episode.
Cool. That's definitely a game I want to talk about because that's super up and coming. I actually just watched a podcast about it. I think I sent it to you, but I have a little bit more to say on that later.
Cool.
To get to it.
Cool. Furthermore, I'm a big fan of Netflix hit series The Peaky Blinders. So yeah, Peaky Blinders Mastermind is out on PS4. It's a little puzzle adventure game romp. Very, very akin to the overhead original GTAs that we had in GTA 1 and 2. It's also a puzzle game. As much as I love that IP, I probably will not be playing it. But I may be playing Samurai Jack Battle Through Time that just came out this week. Samurai Jack, beloved early 2000s TV show. Dave, did you ever watch Samurai Jack?
I have vague memories of watching that show, late at night on Toonami, right? That's where it was.
Yeah, I think Samurai Jack might be one of the real first early great American produced sort of anime, like we see in Avatar now, and yeah.
Yeah, I want to go back and rewatch that show. I haven't watched it in so long, but I remember it being really cool.
I never watched it too much when it first came out. My parents we didn't have cable in my house at that point. I was only able to catch episodes at my cousin's house or other people's houses. But yeah, that Samurai Jack Battle Through Time is gonna be a great little hack and slash romp through some of the best battles of that series. Furthermore, we have new Linkin Park song pack coming to Beat Saber. For anybody who hasn't checked out Beat Saber, find somebody you know that owns a VR headset, because that is really the standout game on there right now. Furthermore, Mortal Souls is another Dark Souls clone that just came out. Not exactly getting glowing reviews, but if you're into those sort of games, check it out.
Also, we have a couple Xbox releases that just happened, which is pretty rare.
Yeah.
Speaking of Rare, I think Rare developed it. Battletoads came out, and I think that one's also getting kind of mixed reviews. I think it's kind of reminiscent of what the original game was, and I think it's kind of shown its date by now. People are not really feeling it. It's supposed to be a beat 'em up, but I think it has a ton of other elements to it, a bunch of other kind of like mini games within the game. So I think people were expecting just like 100%, beat 'em up. But I have yet to check that one out. And then we also have Microsoft Flight Simulator, which came out on the PC on Windows 10, I believe.
Oh, that looks awesome.
Yeah, that one is supposed to be like next gen status, like what next gen is going to promise. Then just in terms of what's in the game, I think it has really accurate GPS type stuff. You can see your house and whatnot if you fly wherever. So that one's getting really good reviews. So those are the Xbox releases of the week.
Cool.
Let's head into our next segment.
Thank you, David.
Cross-examination. So for anyone new who's listening, cross-examination is a segment where we both bring up very relevant topics regarding Xbox and PlayStation, kind of where they intersect in the gaming industry, and we create some sort of rhetoric or argument about what's going on and kind of project what we think is going to happen in the future. And this week, we actually happen to come across a couple big stories. This week's cross-examination topic is particularly about a GameSpot article that came out last week regarding Xbox Series X. And if you tune into our first episode, we actually briefly mentioned the Phil Spencer interview on Animal Talking with Gary Whitta. And in that article, they were talking about the Halo Infinite delay, Series X, what they're kind of promising with Game Pass and xCloud and stuff. So this kind of followed up on it, and GameSpot created their own argument saying, these are the reasons why you shouldn't buy an Xbox Series X, kind of per Phil Spencer. So they're pretty much saying, Phil Spencer is saying, don't buy an Xbox Series X, even though that's going to be the new hot console this Christmas. So it's a very interesting article, and I thought it would be really cool to talk about. Are we ready for a next-gen jump? And that's the most interesting thing to talk about, because we have a new development with PS5 we'll get to a little bit later. Particularly in regards to this article, GameSpot does quote here, as Microsoft has revealed more about the Series X's technical prowess, that seems to be the case. The Velocity architecture, the cooling system, quick resume, native 4K, 8K capabilities, 120Hz capabilities, and an ultra-fast SSD that can even surpass what is on the market for high-end gaming PCs. There is enough there to justify the existence of the Series X, but not everyone needs or wants to play games. So kind of what they're saying here is, following up on Phil Spencer's interview, yeah, the Xbox Series X is a beast of a console, but also there's not a lot of reason to leave the current console, because they're giving so much support to that. And the jump from the Xbox One X to the Series X is not leaps and bounds. In terms of performance, yes, but graphical fidelity, I don't see that there is a huge reason to jump. But that's just us. Pat, what do you think about that?
Well, I'll start out by, I think I might be buying a PlayStation 5 on day one, but that will be the only reason to justify that is so we can be making more content, we can have a very informed opinion and get the news out to people. But as far as the average consumer, which I would classify us as average consumers even 3 weeks ago before we started this podcast, that it's really not necessary. And what came to mind after seeing this Phil Spencer interview where he says it's not necessary to buy the Series X, it really brought to mind to me the analogy of Netflix and how Netflix has completely shook up the movie industry. When Netflix first began, we were getting DVDs sent to our house. And yeah, that was a great model. People were used to DVDs. But at some point, the capability for streaming arose, and we've hit that point with video games. And I think in the mindset of consumers, it's gonna be strange to separate ourselves from the console that sits under our TV. And maybe that console isn't necessary anymore, but really it's a figure and a vessel to deliver this new streaming service, whether or not you need that specific piece of hardware.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of just like straight up hardware, you're saying it's not really necessary, you think?
Yeah,
we're talking strictly hardware.
Yeah, I think in the minds of consumers is in sort of a perspective. For perspective purposes, I think the new console is better. I think if Xbox said, "Oh, we're moving only streaming, and you can just do it from your old Xbox that's 10 years old now, and we're not going to give you any new hardware," but PlayStation 5 is still dropping, I think that creates a perception that maybe Microsoft would be jumping out of the video game realm, or is much weaker at that point than Sony. The hardware is more for perception purposes at this point than anything else.
Yeah, I almost feel like at this point that the Series X exists kind of just to literally compete against PlayStation 5, because PlayStation 5 is doubling down on like their exclusive first-party games just on their console, and also they're doubling down on like the 3D sound experience. They're really marketing that. They're marketing haptic feedback and all these like super immersive things. Like they're almost doubling down on like focusing in on their platform, whereas Xbox is like saying, well, look outside of the Xbox. Look outside of the box, I guess. And like check out your phone, check out a tablet. You know, that's where you can play your games. And even if they're first party games that they're promising, they're only most of them are only going to be first party for a little bit, and then they'll be on PC, or they might even go to PlayStation. I don't think I actually mentioned this to you before we started, but there is actually a Forbes article that came out, and it said, per an Amazon post, that Halo Infinite might actually be delayed to the end of the year of 2021. So there's especially not a reason now to buy a Series X for a whole year, which is crazy. It's almost like the generation leap is not really happening for Xbox. And that's weird. That's just really weird to think about. Like, it is, but it isn't. There's not a ton of games that are going to be on it.
It's not the craziest thing in the world as far as if we look back at the Xbox 360 and PS3 generation. The PS3 did come out almost an entire year after the Xbox One, but that did really end up hurting that console, and it took half of that console generation for the PS3 numbers to catch up to the Xbox 360, and I think in people's minds it never really did catch up as far as the gaming platform to jump to first.
They also had I think they had a higher price point too, the PS3.
That's correct. Which it was well over $500.
Going back to like just in terms of the leap, I think I watched a couple of videos about the hard specs on both of these consoles, and it seems like the performance is going to be extremely different from what we have now. So in terms of just raw performance for like hardcore gamers like us, it's justified going forward. But for just like the casual player, in my opinion, I don't think they're going to see too much of a graphical leap that we got from the N64 to the GameCube, or the GameCube to the Wii, or you know what I'm talking about. Like, there's a clear jump. Here it's not. I feel like it's not as clear, and that's what the gaming industry does, is they market graphics, they market like big games. I think next gen is going to be defined by performance of these consoles, and also the capabilities of what games can do, like Flight Simulator, or like having a bigger battle royale type thing with like Fall Guys or PUBG or Fortnite. We'll get those type of experiences, but we'll get them in a different way, in a bigger way. That's what I'm most excited for. But in terms of just the two consoles, I'm not sold as of right now to buy it. Like, I'm cool with waiting a year. I'm totally cool with that.
I don't think it's been fully appreciated in the industry yet how different the sort of meta games that Xbox and PlayStation are playing right now in terms of marketing or what may have you, that yeah, PlayStation has really doubled down on these are the games. You show up to the PS5, you get these awesome games. Yeah, PlayStation does have their PlayStation Now streaming service, but I've found it to be really fairly lacking in terms of available games that I really do want to play. I think Xbox is leaps and bounds ahead of them, and Xbox is playing the streaming game. They really don't care about, and you can see it in Phil Spencer's quote, they really don't care about the Series X at the end of the day, but they care about you buying into their streaming service and their platform as an entirety. The Series X may be for the most hardcore of gamers. You see me, I'd classify myself as a casual Xbox gamer, very casual, but I'm really stoked to be able to jump in on my PC and play with you sitting on your couch at home on your Xbox Series X.
Do you think that PlayStation will eventually get to the point of where Xbox is at in terms of Game Pass? Because right now, that's the only thing that's really competing with Sony for Xbox. That's going for them right now. I mean, they do have a slightly more powerful console, but they don't have the games, and Sony absolutely has those games. So do you think at some point Sony will have to fully retaliate against Xbox in that regard? Because right now you're right, they do have their own version of Game Pass, but it's not as compelling. It's not as great of a deal. So do you think by a year from now that they'll be on that same plane? Or do you think they're just going to keep trying to funnel people into their first party, like just, buy our game, come to our, live in our ecosystem? Or do you think they're going to try to match?
I don't think Sony's really going to respond to the moves that Xbox has been making until it starts hitting their bottom line and they see that the profits that they've made from selling games on their platform, third-party games on their platform, start dropping, and their profits are a couple $1 million out before they say, okay, we have to switch up the game. Even a year from now, when Halo does come out, I don't think we're going to have Horizon Zero Dawn 2 on the PlayStation Now streaming service. And as far as we know, that's going to be Sony's biggest game up until the time Halo Infinite does come out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I mean, kind of concluding it, I don't want to keep going in forever about it. I think at the end of the day, like, I see both sides of the coin. I see the reason why. If you want the best, you want the latest and greatest, and your games will run really well on these consoles, like, I see an argument for upgrading. But at the same time, even as a hardcore gamer, I see the reasons to wait. And personally, I think that this generational leap probably should have happened a year from now, especially given the pandemic and all that stuff. It probably would have benefited that. I think it would have benefited both companies in the long run to just go all out next year and really put forth the effort to bring those first-party games day one to consoles instead of rushing it out in this whole, like, every 7-year period type thing.
I'm kind of with you that I think the consoles would benefit overall by being moved to next year. I don't think the companies have any capacity to do it. We've seen both Xbox and PlayStation really double, triple down on we're releasing our consoles this year. I think that's less about having a reaction or lack of reaction to the pandemic and more so of these consoles they start planning these consoles as soon as the console before comes out. It's been a 5 to 10 year road to get the PlayStation 5 out, and there's other companies that have marketing contracts tied in. There's companies that are relying on their games coming out the day one when these consoles are released. At the end of the day, Sony's checkbook is reliant on having the income of these consoles in November 2020. Same thing with Xbox, is they're reliant on having this hardware. All these companies have already been bleeding money for months and months since the beginning of 2020. And if one of these companies, if Microsoft or Sony had to delay one of their consoles, I think it truly could be the nail in the coffin for them not making games anymore.
Yeah. I guess in a perfect world, it'd be nice to just have them both agree and say, hey, let's both win at the end of the day. But of course, if one were to pull out, it would either be like, well, I'm going to stay and rake in all the money, or they would follow suit. But yeah, in a perfect world.
Yeah, if this was an indie game company making consoles in the backyard or in out of a garage, maybe, but there's so much money tied up between cross border nations. It's too much of a mess to try and push the consoles out of the year, even if they're projected to only sell 10% of what the original expectations pre-COVID were.
Mm-hmm. Well, that concludes our cross-examination segment. Tell us what you guys think about, should we jump to the next generation or not? I mean, I know we don't have that much power over it, but what do you think? Let us know.
Let me finish off with one last point, is we see a lot of people making the argument that, there's not a lot of games coming out day one. There's not a great reason to pick up the console day one. Well, let me break it to you. There's never been a good console to pick up day one. There's always hardware issues. We saw it with the Xbox 360 with a crazy failure rate. They changed the model. PlayStation has never had a crazy good lineup. They always seem to hit all the checkboxes in terms of diversity of games. Almost every single console, Xbox and PlayStation, has had like a fighting game, a sports game, a kid game, and a shooting game sort of day one. If you're really ready to jump, make the jump, but there's no real reason to yet.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to our next segment. Pat, you want to take over with this one?
Sure. So our next segment, as listeners may have heard in our first episode, our cross-examination was previously a conglomeration of all the news. But now we have changed that, and we've added this new segment after cross-examination called Fast Fire News, where we'll just go through some of the less critical news stories of the week and just give you a quick run-through. So, David, you want to start out with the Fall Guys news?
Okay. Our first article of the Fast Fire News is about Fall Guys coming to Xbox, and this is an article written by Forbes. It's kind of just speculating as to when the new Fall Guys, the huge game, Battle Royale. What type of game is that?
It's been described as a battle royale, really, because that's the best descriptor we have in the industry at large at this time for games where groups of 50 to 100 can all come in and play together. We saw the term battle royale really flourished through PlayerUnknown's Battleground, which was the first 1v99 sort of multiplayer game.
So this is like a battle royale mixed with like Wipeout, or what's that castle game? Oh, it's like that show
Ninja Warrior.
I don't know. I'm sure there's a better example for it, but yeah, it's basically that. It's a huge game. There was an article about it that was talking about the Reddit AMA that happened with the developers, and in regards to having their exclusivity with Sony, they quoted and said, "Sony was really enthusiastic about the game when we showed them an early version of it, and we felt that taking this route would help expose the game to a far larger audience than we could have reached on our own. Also, it's something that worked super well for Rocket League, which has been one of our inspirations." End quote. I think it's really cool how they compare themselves to Rocket League. That makes me really hopeful for the game. I haven't played it yet because I just don't have a PlayStation and I haven't got too much time to play it. So I think it's really cool that they draw that comparison with Rocket League, because Rocket League did start out super small, and then now they have this really cool longevity of the game, like endless updates. They have a really good relationship with their community from what I've experienced with the game. So I think it's really cool that we see that type of comparison, and it seems like a really simplistic game that also has like that competitive edge. As I was telling you before, I was listening to a podcast that actually, it's called No Clip Podcast. Mm-hmm. And in the guy was interviewing a couple of the devs from the studio from Fall Guys, and they're just explaining why they made the game the way they did. And it's exactly, they took the DNA from Rocket League. Like, let's make a game that is casual, anyone can jump in, but also it does have this really competitive edge to it, which I thought was really cool. And I'm just really excited about the prospects of what this game can be in the future.
As you're saying, they drew so much inspiration from Rocket League, especially, and I think it falls into the line of, and what really, really makes a great game at the end of the day is it's super easy to learn, but crazy difficult to master. Rocket League's been one of my favorite games for the last 5 years. Being a PlayStation Plus member, this is sort of a PSA at the same time. If you're a PlayStation Plus member, Every month there are free games. You can go in and add them to your download list, but you do not necessarily have to download them. And that's a great way to just create a digital library without having there's no cost to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been playing Rocket League since it came out that first month, and it's been going on 5 years now, and I am just learning how to do aerial shots and aerial hits, which I'm not the best gamer by any stretch of the imagination, but it's...
But you're still playing it, right? I mean, the game came out, 5 years ago now?
Yeah.
And you're still playing it. That says something about a game.
Yeah.
I mean, if one game can hold your attention for that long, and you're not even, that invested in it, that's crazy.
And I'm still learning it. It's not like I've been master of it for 4 years or so, but...
Yeah, going back to the article, I think from what I remember about reading that, it said that the difference between Rocket League becoming from PS4 or whatever to Xbox was that it had, I think, about an 8-month window or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they're speculating that Fall Guys might have that type of exclusivity with Xbox, but there's nothing confirmed because they don't know the ins and outs of their agreement. But I think it's not a bad thing that they had an exclusive deal. They were a smaller studio. They weren't too sure about the game. Go check out that. But before I keep going, go check out No Clip Podcast. That's where I got their interview and stuff. That's really, really good insight as to their thought process behind making that game. But anyways, I think it's a really cool game that has a lot of prospect. I think it will eventually come to every platform, and it'll probably be really big. Hopefully it doesn't get too overly monetized, but I think that's really cool that the people who made the game seem really genuine and passionate about it. It doesn't seem like it's just they made it to be a cash grab. Hopefully we'll see it on Xbox pretty soon here.
I think so. These exclusivity agreements, especially with ones like PlayStation Plus, or when we see new games come out that they say, oh, this is a console exclusive, we never really know the timelines on those. They're usually kept under NDA in the hope that maybe I start playing so much Fall Guys that David does have to go buy a PS5. And maybe he does get unlucky, maybe he does go buy a PS4 because I want him to play Fall Guys with me so badly. And if he's unlucky, then Fall Guys comes to Xbox the next day, and that's just how these exclusivity agreements work.
I feel like with Rocket League in particular, just the comparing that's been going on, Rocket League you can do crossplay.
That's correct. It's a little convoluted, but correct.
I think that would be cool too if it does follow the same path and it becomes so mainstream. Hopefully it's one of those big battle royale type games or big multiplayer games that gets that crossplay treatment. That would be really cool.
I'm sure it will be coming up in a later episode, but Rocket League is in fact planning to go free to play before the end of the summer was the timeline that they gave. So we'll see. We'll have to see.
So our last bit of news, what we want to talk about, we briefly mentioned it in our cross-examination segment, but there was an official PS5 trailer. We watched that a little bit. It pretty much looks like a 5-gum commercial in the beginning with the ice crackling. how it feels to chew 5 gum.
It's a fairly cool commercial. They tried to make it very tactile, and I get it. They're really showcasing and trying to advertise the PlayStation 5 controller. And being that we don't really have any games, the one big release window game is Spider-Man Miles Morales. We don't have a definitive date on that. God forbid it gets pushed to January or February. This new PS5 commercial focuses on the controller.
Yeah, it really showcases in the trailer. It doesn't show anything in particular. It just shows a woman running away from a bunch of stuff and experiencing these crazy visceral, ice cracking, like a monster chasing after her, explosions. They're obviously showcasing the audio prospects of it, the 3D audio that they're touting, and they're also showcasing the haptic feedback. What you're going to experience in that game is that you're going to be completely immersed from the haptic feedback, from the adaptive triggers, and from the audio. They're really trying to give you that feeling of you're going to be inside of this game as compared to last generation, where there were those things, but this is supposed to really double down on what was in the last generation.
And I think we'll look back and laugh on this commercial by the time that VR is crazy and we can start feeling things with different tactile vests and what may have you. Don't go out of your way to watch this PS5 commercial. It's not really worth it. If I wasn't writing this show, I personally would have just waited to organically see it on television. That's how I really enjoy it. And when that moment does come, it really boosts the excitement for that next gen.
Yeah, this didn't feel like something you go out and seek. This feels like something you would watch by happenstance through the commercial break of a football game or something. In regards to the haptic feedback and adaptive triggers, I think it's really cool just to quickly highlight the possibilities of that particular feature in comparison to what Xbox is marketing. So in regards to the haptic feedback and the adaptive triggers that's being promised in this trailer, there was actually a GameSpot article talking about the games that are coming out for PlayStation 5 and what developers are going to be taking advantage. They're going to be taking advantage of the adaptive triggers and haptic feedback. So Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo in particular, I think they talked to the developers. For the Deathloop developer, they said that in the game that there's going to be a feature that prompts the player in a physical way to unjam their gun. And I believe the way that they're going to do that is through locking the trigger on your controller so you feel it. So it gives you like that literal kinetic cue, like, oh, you know, it's going to immerse you more into the game. Hopefully it won't be too annoying. I feel like it's more cool than annoying, but...
It sounds like the thing that could be the most annoying, and they're really going to have to delicately balance that.
It could be gimmicky, but it also could be like... it could be something that stays with video gaming forever after that. Who knows? And then there's also a Ghostwire Tokyo developer that talked to the author of the article, and they said in regards to haptic feedback, the haptic feedback in comparison to vibration functions of previous generations allows us to utilize a much wider range, starting from a very strong vibration that is much more powerful than before, down to extremely light vibration, end quote. And that was Kenji Kimura, the Ghostwire director. So it's really cool. I think I would be more excited about very minuscule vibrations that communicate certain things to you just through the vibrations of the controller rather than the adaptive triggers. I feel like that's more in your face, where I feel like to really immerse you, the subtlety will really work the most with those games.
We're gonna have to get our hands on it before we can really say anything about it.
Literally. Yeah, that's
literally have our hands on it, and that probably won't happen really for anybody till day one. I mean, we'll be able to get anecdotal evidence from people that are able to test and preview the PS5, but until then, there's not much we can do. Yeah. The closest analogy that I could draw, however, and one of the most exciting things for me about the Nintendo Switch, when the Nintendo Switch was first revealed, was the smart features and vibrations that are in those Nintendo Switch controllers. In the game 1-2 Switch, which is really a conglomeration of mini games, a la, what was that? Wii Play, the game that came out after Wii Sports?
I think so.
Yeah, everybody had it. There's the billiards and whatever, a bunch of mini games. There is one mini game in particular where you can shake the Joy-Con Switch controller and it simulates some ice cubes inside a glass or some marbles inside a glass. And in this game, you have to guess how many marbles are in the fake glass. And I think that's really cool. I think that's the closest we can get to testing out the new haptic feedback on the PS5. Mm-hmm. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah, and I think it's not going to be something that we're going to see with every game, but there will be developers that will specifically design their games and keep that in mind. And I hope a lot more do that.
If you're really into this haptic feedback, pick up Everyday One game, because probably Everyday One game will have this feature included, and as the generation goes on, we're probably going to see it less and less and less.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they're advertising. This is why you should buy a next-gen console, is because of haptic feedback, and so this better be a cool feature. Right? If this is what they're marketing.
I think it's going to be pretty awesome. I'm really excited for this controller. I don't know why this is the first controller that has a built-in microphone, but thank God now we can just talk to our friends while we play online without having to have a headset and blah, 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 blah.
Cool.
The last story of our Fast Fire news is that Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War has been officially teased. The cover art is out right now and is maybe the ugliest cover art of any Call of Duty game ever. It's this sort of soldier with his face split down the middle, and it's very, very vibrant colors pulled from different Cold War era imagery, signs, and propaganda, what may have you. But what really drew my attention was the teaser trailer that we got, which reveals which teased that the full reveal will be coming August 26th, just a couple days after the publication of this podcast. And I'm sure we will be talking about Call of Duty next week. But you know what, Dave? This teaser trailer really, really rubbed me the wrong way. First off...
What was the trailer? I honestly, out of all the things that we've covered so far in this episode, that was the one thing I didn't look up. What's in the trailer?
The trailer was this sort of, I'd call it a quote-unquote warning video. It's this long quote taken from an interview of Yuri Bezmenov, who was a defector of the USSR, and I believe he was a former member of the KGB. So anyways, in the late 80s, early 90s, Yuri Bezmenov did this interview here in the United States, and he talks about the psychological warfare program that the Russians were enacting against us really in the Cold War. And you know, Dave, I saw the interview with Yuri about 10 years ago, and it's really jarring listening to the full interview, because it really shows... Maybe, of course, people always draw parallels between things that aren't there. But if you do draw parallels between what he's saying in this video, it really shows you and leads to where our current political climate is. I just think this teaser trailer is a little too on the nose and kind of in bad taste at the end of the day.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't check it out. I feel like Call of Duty is one of those franchises that they swing back and forth between playing it really safe and not trying to offend anyone, and then they'll also try to, they'll swing to the other side where Modern Warfare, they made it as violent as possible to get a reaction out of people. Yeah, this might be the perfect game for the end of the year, toward election time. This might just be the controversial game that will sell copies. So we'll see.
Yeah. Let's be honest. They'll probably sell a copy or two to us, but we'll complain about it until then. And then we'll probably love the game.
So we'll keep you guys updated on Call of Duty. Cool.
All right.
So our next segment is Pat's rotating rushed rant. Pat's rushed rants, where Pat rants in a rushed way.
So yeah, this is our rotating fun segment. Last week, what the heck did we do last week? Oh, it was the feel-good, the heart-warmer story.
Yeah, we're not feeling good this week. We're going to feel a little bad.
No, Dave, you know what? I'm feeling particularly whiny and complainy and, a little bit angry.
Begin rant.
This rant really begins with an article I found about Spider-Man Miles Morales, and I'm not going to put anybody on blast. There are far too many news outlets that are very guilty of this, far too many quote-unquote journalists that are guilty of this. But so this story that I found was saying Spider-Man Miles Morales is a fully fleshed out story. Of course it's a fully fleshed out story. I don't need a 4-paragraph article telling me that. It's a single game. It's not an episodic game. Of course it's going to be a fully fleshed out story. Even if it ends on a cliffhanger, it's a full story with a rising action, a climax, and an ending. But on top of that, I'm just really sick of clickbait articles, and I think it is really becoming an endemic problem where we see people all the time, I'm guilty of it, going, oh, I read this headline and it said XYZ. Well, a lot of these clickbait headlines, you click on the article, you start reading the article, and they spend 5 to 10 paragraphs rolling back what they said in the headline, saying, oh, it's actually the complete opposite, but whatever. And I'm really sick. I'm really, really sick of it, Dave. The news cycle, this speaks to why this podcast is only once a week, why we try to keep it so short and concise, respect people's time. The news cycle these days of publications is way too fast for the news actually being made. If I went to a website and there's only 5 articles published during the day instead of 100, I would be way more content if I know those 5 articles are good and substantive and informative. So that's where my rant ends today, Dave. Just be better, people. Do a little more research.
And that was Pat's rushed rant of the week. Cool. Well, Pat, do you want me to comment on your rant?
Sure, go ahead.
Do you want to just move on?
Go ahead and comment on that rant.
You know what? I have to completely agree, and I think a lot of YouTubers actually I think they do this the worst. But you know what? I'm just as pissed off as you about the professional news outlets doing this. Because guess what? YouTubers, they're just trying to make a living. They need anything to survive off of their content. And yes, a lot of people online do the exact same thing, but you know what the difference is? Is that news outlets are paid by big corporations to do this type of work, which I could just poop out of my butt in like 2 seconds. No, but for real, like a lot of they will give those like clickbaity headlines, and like that's not really news. But the thing that pisses me off the most is that they're told to do this, or they're told to do something, and then they end up doing like they're squandering our time. Blech.
You know what?
Blech. Rant.
Thanks for that, David. And Dave, you might agree with me today, but who knows? Next time I might be completely off base, and you're free to.
I'm free to
completely disagree with me.
Yeah, but you know what? I completely agree. They're paid. That's their job, is to do journalism, and they're not completely. They're just doing opinion pieces about non-news.
You know what? I'll make a little call to action for people that click on a clickbait headline. If you go through and if you click on the clickbait headline and they spend that whole article drawing back what they're saying oh, it's not that way actually. You know what? With these clickbait headlines, just go ahead and like sort of blacklist that news outlet in your mind or that particular journalist. Don't go put these people on blast, Go
to their house. Is what we're saying.
No, do not. I'm taking that out of this show. No, it's an endemic problem. It's no one person's decision to put out these headlines.
But you know what? Let's flip it. Are they actually more desperate than YouTubers? Because people like to watch YouTube videos or like just put them on in the background. How many people actually go out and read like news articles, except for us, people who actually work in like with video games and stuff? I'm sure it's hard for them to get clicks, but at the same time, they have to be above that. I'm not excusing them, but I'm just saying maybe they come from a different context than like an influencer.
I'll make an analogy real quick. If you're serving McDonald's all day and eating McDonald's all day, eventually your gut's gonna get used to that and be craving McDonald's all day. But if you take a steak after all that McDonald's and eat it and enjoy it, that steak is going to be more substantive. It's going to be better. Yeah, you might want some more McDonald's for the time being, but you can get used to that substantive steak. And Dave, I just want there to be more substantive steaks in the video game industry. Less fast food.
Agreed. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's episode. You can find me at SDDawg. That's SDDAWG on YouTube. Pat, where can we find you?
I have been your host, PlayStation Pat Fennel. You can find me on YouTube at Variety Pat. That is VARIOTY Pat. Or on Instagram at Prime Patrick.
Check us out on patreon.com/green versus blue. That's patreon.com/green vs blue.
You can also email the show at PSBoxCast@gmail.com. That is PSBoxCast@gmail.com.
Have any thoughts, suggestions about our podcasts, or have any burning questions, please hit us up. We would love to hear from you.
Can't wait to see you next week. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.